My name is Detective Pierce. Most know me as the man who walks willingly into the shadows, who follows the whispers others pretend not to hear. I have seen horrors in forgotten alleys, in collapsing houses, in villages that cling to life only by denial. But even I sometimes long for the lie of peace. That night, I wasn't looking for a case. The city had finally quieted, the rain left its sheen across the pavement, and my body begged for rest. I should have gone home. I should have closed the door, poured a drink, forgotten the world. Instead, I stopped in front of a 24-hour convenience store. The neon sign sputtered above the glass door, its light stammering, as though unsure if it wanted to remain alive. Open 24/7. Letters half burned out, buzzing like insects caught in a lamp. The street was empty behind me, drowned in shadows, yet the store glowed like an island of uneasy light. I couldn't say why I entered. Perhaps habit. Perhaps instinct. Or perhaps something had already been waiting for me inside. The bell above the door jingled with a sound too sharp for the silence outside. Inside, the air was heavy with the stale perfume of old bread, cheap disinfectant, and something else, faint but insistent. Metallic. Like the smell of rust, or blood. Behind the counter sat a young cashier. His posture was slumped, eyes ringed with sleeplessness. He looked at me, nodded, but his lips didn't move. A small radio behind him played static between notes of a half-tuned song, a melody that sounded older than the building itself. The aisles stretched before me, shelves sparsely filled, goods shoved without order. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, too bright, too white, casting everything in the sterile glow of a morgue. Every so often, one of the tubes flickered, plunging half the store into momentary shadow, before snapping back alive. And that was when I saw her. At the far end, near the refrigerated section, a woman stood. Her back to me, hair black and long, falling down to her waist. She did not move. She did not shop. She simply stood, facing the freezer doors. For a moment, I thought she was looking at the rows of bottles and packages inside. But then I realized, no. She wasn't looking in. She was looking through. Her reflection in the glass didn't match her posture. The cashier noticed my stare. His hands twitched on the counter. He leaned forward just enough for his voice to reach me in a whisper. "You see her too?" The woman tilted her head. Slowly. Unnaturally. Her reflection didn't follow. The store's humming grew louder. The radio's static sharpened. And I understood then, this wasn't a stop for cigarettes or bread. This wasn't routine. This was why I had walked through that door. This was a case. The woman did not move. Not a breath, not a twitch of muscle. The fluorescent lights above her buzzed and trembled, throwing her form into shifting fragments. At first, I thought she was merely a late-night customer, lost in thought, exhausted like the rest of us. But her reflection betrayed her. It wasn't mirroring her body. Her arms, her head, her entire figure, the glass showed her standing wrong. Slightly angled, slightly delayed, like a puppet whose strings had been crossed. The cashier's eyes darted nervously toward me, his lips pressed thin. He was young, far too young to be working nights in a place like this. And yet his face carried the weight of something older, something heavy. "You see her," he repeated, but his voice cracked on the last word. "Most don't." I stepped closer, the rubber soles of my shoes squeaking faintly on the polished floor. My reflection joined hers in the freezer door, and I caught something impossible. Her reflection was closer to me than she was. As if, inside that glass, she was leaning forward, craning toward me. Her head jerked a few degrees, fast, sharp. Then her reflection smiled. The real figure did not. I froze, every instinct pulling me to leave, But something stronger, call it curiosity, call it duty, held me still. Cases never came politely. They clawed their way into your life when you least wanted them. The radio behind the counter cracked, the static sharpening into words that weren't words, syllables that bent against human tongue. The cashier hissed and snapped the dial off, his hands shaking. "She's been here 3 nights in a row," he whispered. "Always the same. Just standing there, looking at the glass. I thought it was a trick of the lights at first. I tried to talk to her." He swallowed, his Adam's apple trembling. "She didn't answer. But her reflection did." The words sat heavy in the air, too heavy for this small, suffocating store. I glanced back. The woman still hadn't turned. But her reflection had shifted, just slightly, her head bent lower, her mouth opening wider. Not in speech. In a grin? A grin stretched too far, as though her face had been carved. I approached cautious. Each step closer felt like moving deeper underwater, the lights dimming with distance. My breath grew louder in my ears. My reflection seemed slower, distorted. The cold glass hummed with electricity as I reached out a hand. The woman's reflection tilted its head to meet me. And then her real body twitched, a sudden, violent shudder, and she began to move. Not away. Not toward me. But sideways, sliding her feet across the floor in unnatural, dragging motions, without lifting them. The reflection didn't follow. It remained in place. Smiling. The freezer door trembled beneath my fingertips, a vibration running through the glass as though something on the other side was pounding to get out. And then, all at once, the lights above us died. The store collapsed into blackness. For a moment, only the static of the radio remained. But in that suffocating dark, I heard something else too, a laugh. Soft. Wet. Coming from both the far aisle, and right behind me. The case had begun in earnest. The blackness pressed in like a living thing. A silence so thick it devoured my heartbeat, until the only sound was the shallow scrape of my own breath. Somewhere in the dark, I could hear her, not moving like a person, but sliding, dragging, as if the soles of her shoes had fused with the floor. Then came the whisper. Not from her. From the glass. It was my own voice. "Don't turn around." My body tensed. My instincts screamed at me to bolt for the door, but something colder, sharper, kept me anchored. I'd been here before, not in this store, not with this ghostly figure, but in moments where the unknown was more dangerous than whatever waited behind you. I crouched low, my hand brushing along the linoleum tiles, searching for orientation. The cashier's voice broke suddenly, thin and desperate. "Sir? Are you? Oh God, she's moving toward you!" And then his words cut off, smothered like a flame in water. The radio crackled back to life. Not static now, but a chorus. Dozens of voices, whispering in unison, chanting words that blurred together. One moment they were too fast, too sharp to follow. The next, I could swear they were speaking my name. "Detective! Detective, come closer." The freezer doors along the aisle flickered, their surfaces lighting up faintly, one by one, as if illuminated from inside. In each, I saw reflections of myself. Not delayed this time. Not distorted. Just wrong. One reflection had no eyes. Another's mouth stretched too wide. Another's head tilted at an angle no spine should allow. A dozen fractured versions of me stared back, and in the gaps between them, I saw her. The woman. But inside the glass, her face pressed flat against the barrier, her teeth gritting, cracking against the surface as she smiled wider and wider. Her real body was gone. No footsteps. No dragging. Only the reflections remained. I forced myself to stand. My hand brushed against the shelf, potato chips crinkling under my grip, and the mundane sound was like a lifeline. Something normal. Something grounding. Then I felt the vibration again. The freezer glass pulsing under my fingertips. She wanted out? I clenched my jaw and stepped back. My shadow bent strangely against the faint glow, stretching across the ceiling instead of the floor. Each freezer door rattled harder, and harder still, until with a shriek of metal and a burst of frigid air, one of them burst open. She fell out. But not the way a body should fall. She poured, like liquid shadow, limbs jerking at wrong angles, her mouth wide enough to split her face in half. The floor shook under her weightless steps as she began to crawl toward me, fast, too fast. I grabbed the nearest object, a metal mop handle leaning against the aisle, and held it like a spear. My rational mind told me it was useless. How do you fight a reflection, a thing that shouldn't even exist? But I had no choice. She lunged. And just as her face came close enough that I could smell the rot on her breath, I thrust the metal forward. It pierced nothing. It went straight through her, striking the freezer glass behind. The lights came back on. The store was empty. No woman. No reflections. The freezer doors hung open, their insides perfectly ordinary, lined with frozen dinners and ice cream. The radio was silent. The cashier sat behind the counter, trembling, but alive. For a long moment, we stared at each other in silence. Then he croaked. You made her leave." I shook my head. "No. She wasn't here for me. She was here for you." His face went pale. It clicked then. The way he had spoken. The fear in his eyes before I even saw her. He had invited her somehow. Called her. Maybe not intentionally, maybe out of desperation, loneliness, or curiosity. But something in him had opened the door. I stepped toward the counter. "She'll come back. Unless you close it." He swallowed, tears shining in his eyes. "Close what?" I pointed at the mirror behind him, the small square mounted on the wall to watch the aisles. Its surface was no longer reflecting us. It was dark, like a window into a place without light. A faint grin was spreading in its depth. The boy whimpered, covering his face. I raised the mop handle high, and with one swift motion, smashed it into the glass. The mirror shattered into 100 glittering shards that scattered across the counter. The grin was gone. The store exhaled, as though it had been holding its breath for hours. The humming of the lights steadied. The air felt lighter, real again. The cashier peeked through his fingers, then let out a broken laugh. You did it." I set the mop aside, my pulse finally slowing. "No. We did just enough. But some doors don't close forever." I left him there, shaken but alive, and stepped out into the empty street. The city beyond was quiet, too quiet for the hour, as if even the night had decided to look away. Another case closed, for now. But in the reflection of the store's glass window, I thought I saw myself grin. And it wasn't my grin at all.